Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrence Sedan, and welcome to our webinar today on On-Premises NAS Upgrade, Paid Maintenance, or Public Cloud. Our speaker today is going to be Kevin Brown, who is a Solutions Architect here at SoftNAS. Kevin, do you want to go ahead and give a quick hello?
Hello, how you guys doing?
Thanks, Kevin. And before we begin the webinar, we just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items with y'all. Today's webinar, in order to listen to today's webinar, you'll click on the telephone icon that you see here on the GoToMeeting control panel. Any questions that you might have during the webinar can be posted in the questions box, and we're going to be answering those questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to ask your questions. And then finally, this webinar is also being recorded. So for those of you who are unable to make it or have colleagues that this might be of interest to, you'll be able to share the webinar recording with them later on today. So please keep an eye out for your email, and we'll send that information your way. Also, as a bonus for attending today's webinar, we are going to be handing out $100 AWS credits, and we'll have more information about that later on at the end of the webinar. And then finally, for our agenda today, we're going to be talking about this whole on-premises to cloud conversation. So we're going to show you the differences between on-premises versus hyperconverged versus AWS. We're actually going to demo how to move your on-premises storage to AWS without having to modify any of your applications. And we'll also tell you, here's why you should choose AWS over on-premises and hyperconverged. And we'll also give you some information about the actual total cost of ownership for AWS, and we'll show you how to use the AWS TCO Calculator. And then we'll tell you just a little bit about SoftNAS and how it helps with your cloud migrations. And finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end where we answer any and all questions that you might ask. With that being said, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Kevin to begin the webinar. Kevin, you are now the presenter. Thanks, Kevin. I think you might also be on mute.
Not a problem. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good night. And we appreciate that you've logged in today from wherever you are in the world. And we thank you for taking the time and joining us for this webinar. Today we're actually going to focus on a storage dilemma that we have happening with IT teams and organizations all across the world. The looming question is, what do I do when my maintenance renewal comes up? Teams are left with three options. Either we stay on premise and pay the renewal fee for your maintenance bill, which is a continuously increasing expense, or you could consider a forklift upgrade, where you're buying a new NAS or SAN and move into a hyperconverged platform. The drawback with this option is that you still haven't solved all your problems because you're still on-prem, you're still using hardware, and with the new maintenance renewal is about 24 to 12 months away. Finally, customers can lift and shift their data to AWS. Hardware will no longer be required, and data centers can be unplugged. Does this sound familiar to anybody on this call? There's an increase in maintenance costs for support, for swapping disks, for downtime. There is exorbitant pricing for SSD drive and SSD storage, where you're paying an arm and a leg for pricing that you need to pay to ensure that your environment works as advertised. You have a never-ending pressure from business to add more storage capacity. We need it now, and we need more of it. There's a lack of low-cost, high-performance object storage, and you're pressured by the business unit owners for agile infrastructure. The business is growing, data is growing, you need to be ahead of the curve, and way ahead of the curve to actually keep up. So let's take a look. Let's do a stare and compare of all these three options that are there. So on-premise, hyperconverged, and also AWS Cloud. From a security standpoint, all these three options deliver a secure environment with all the rules and policies that you have already designed to protect your environment. They travel with you. From an infrastructure and management scenario, your on-premise and hyperconverged still requires your current staff to maintain and update the underlying infrastructure. So that's where we're talking about your disk swaps, your networking, your racking and unracking. AWS can help you limit this IT burden with its managed infrastructure. From a scalability standpoint, I dare that you call your NAS or SAN provider and tell them that you think you bought too much storage last year and you want to give them back some. Tell me how that plays out. I say this in jest, but in AWS, you get just that option. You have the ability to scale up or scale down, allowing you to grow as needed and not as estimated. We talked a bit on the last slide about the infrastructure and how AWS can help lessen some of that IT burden. So for your on-premise and hyperconverged system, you control and manage everything from layer 1 all the way up to layer 7. In an AWS model, you can remove the need for jobs like maintenance, disk swapping, monitoring the health of your system, and hand that over to AWS. You're still in control of managing user accounts, access, and your application, but you could wave goodbye to hardware, maintenance fees, and your forklift upgrades. So with that, I'd like to share 8 reasons for you to choose AWS for your storage infrastructure. From a scalability standpoint, we talked about this earlier, giving you the ability to grow your storage as needed, not as estimated. And for the people who are storage gurus, you know exactly what that means. I've definitely been in rooms sitting with people with predictive modeling about how much data we are going to grow by for the next quarter or for the next year. And I can tell you for 100% fact, I have never, ever been in a room where we've come out with an accurate number. It's always been an idea, a hope, a dream, a guess. With this, with AWS and the scalability that it provides, we give you the ability to grow your storage and then pay for it as you go and only pay for what you use. That in of itself is worth its own weight in gold. Not only that, you get a chance to end your maintenance renewals and no longer pay for that maintenance ransom where they're holding your access to your data until your maintenance ransom is actually paid. There's also huge benefits for trading in CapEx for the OpEx model. There's no more long-term commitment. When you're finished with the resource, you send it back to provider. You're done with using your S3 disks, you turn it off and you send that back to Amazon. You also gain freedom from having to make a significant long-term investment for equipment that you and I know will eventually break down or become outdated. You also have a reliable infrastructure. We're talking about S3 and its 11 nines worth of durability. EC2, where it gives you 4 nines versus 4 nines worth of accessibility for your multi-AZ deployments. You have functions like disaster recovery, ease of use, ease to manage, and you're utilizing the best in the class in security to protect your data.
All right, thanks for that, Kevin. What we're going to do now is just ask a quick poll question to the audience here. Basically, if you're currently using an on-premises NAS system and it's coming up for maintenance renewal, what do you intend to do? Are you going to do an in-place upgrade where you use your existing hardware but you update the software? Are you going to do a forklift upgrade where you just buy new hardware and software? Or are you going to move to a hyperconverged system, or are you considering the public cloud, whether it's AWS or other options? So I'll go ahead and give just a few more seconds for everyone to answer. Looks like about half of you have voted already, so I'll give that about 10 more seconds and I'll close the poll. I'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everyone. So as you can see here, we have a pretty good mix of what y'all intend to do. So we have most of you are intending to move to the public cloud, whether it's AWS or others. Looks like a lot of you are actually interested in place NAS and SAN upgrades, which is pretty interesting. A lot of you are also considering moving to hyperconverged. And for those of you who answered other, we'd be really curious to learn more about what your other plans are. So, if in the questions pane, you're more than welcome to write what you're intending to do. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over back to Kevin to handle the demo. Kevin?
All right, not a problem. Can you guys see my screen?
I can.
All right, perfect. All right, so for the sake of Murphy's Law, I actually went ahead and did a recording of this just to make sure that no issues or problems would actually happen with the demo. So we're going to walk through, I'm going to talk through this video that I'm playing. So we have the ability, we're talking about lifting and shifting to the cloud, and that can be done in multiple ways. If we're talking about from a petabyte scale, you could actually incorporate AWS import using Snowball. You could connect directly using AWS Direct Connect, or you could use some open source tools or programs like rsync, lsync, and robocopy. Once your data is in the cloud, it's how are you going to maintain that same enterprise level experience that you're used to. With SoftNAS, you have that ability. And we give you the opportunity to be able to have our no downtime SLA. And we're the only company that gives that guarantee. So we'll be able to walk through the demo. So let me actually show you. One of the things I'm going to show is the ease of use that we have and what we actually do with attaching storage and sharing that storage out to your data consumers. So in this demo, we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to add a device. We're going to add some S3 storage. Very simple and easy. We click Add Device. It comes up, Cloud Disk Extender, and we're going to choose Amazon Web Services S3. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click Next. You then have the ability, because we've defined IAM role, you don't have to share your access keys or security keys. We do give you the ability to go in and select your region. For this case of this demo, my instances exist in Northern California, so I'm going to select Northern California. But if you had an S3 region that's closer to you, you would have the ability to do that also. We give you the ability to choose the bucket name, and we increment up the S3 buckets as they are actually created. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a 10 gig drive just to make sure that this actually creates quickly and easy for you to see. We also give you the ability to encrypt that disk. That would be Amazon's encryption that we allow you to bleed through. We give you the ability to also encrypt at a different level. So from this, we see that our S3 disk has been created, and it's now available to be assigned to a storage group. We're also going to add some EBS disk. We know S3 is not Amazon's most performant disk, but you also, for your data that requires more performant backend, we allow you to actually add Amazon's EBS disk. With that, we already told you IAM there, so we don't have to use our key. For the sake of this, we're actually going to do 15 gigs. You have the ability to encrypt it again. This is disk level encryption. But then we also give you the ability to choose the storage that is best suited towards your purpose. So we have general purpose SSDs. You could use provisioned IOP disk for your more performant data, or you could choose to use your standard. For the sake of this demo, we'll choose general purpose, and I will select to use 3. So with that, we're actually just going to go, and we're going to create that EBS disk. As you see, the wizard in the background is creating it. It's going through the process of creating, attaching, and partitioning those disks to be used by the SoftNAS device. We give it a couple of seconds. We'll see that this actually completes. All right, so now we have our system. We have that our disks, both our S3 and our EBS disks, they have the ability for us to actually assign them to our storage pool. So our storage pool is what we use to aggregate our disks, and we have then the ability to actually add some enhancements while we go through that process. So we'll go ahead and we'll select Create. So at this point in time, I'm very descriptive with how what I name my disk. So at this, I'm going to call this EBS pool. I'm going to go ahead and select RAID 0, and that's because we're already working with highly performant, redundant disks, and at that point, nothing that I add can actually add to the performant system that Amazon has. But we can stripe across those disks, which should enhance performance going in. We'll go ahead, we'll select those. We'll select that drive, and we'll go ahead. If we go ahead, we said it's coming up saying that we've chosen no RAID, and that's okay because we're talking about cloud and highly redundant disks. So we're in, and so we're going to do the same thing for our S3 pool. We're going to go in, we're going to call it S3 underscore pool, if I could spell it correctly. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to select our S3 storage. You're going to select RAID 0 so we could stripe across. Remember, striping across is similar to what you would have in your environment with a server. The more disks you're striping across, the more performance you actually make in the system. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to create this pool. And now we have an EBS pool, and we also have an S3 pool set up. I'm going to go in, and these are some of the other enhancements that we could actually add to the system. So in front of my S3 pool, I'm going to actually add some read cache. With the system that I chose, I have ephemeral drives associated with it. This is a M3X large, and with that, I'll be able to put that ephemeral drive in front of my system as a way to make my S3 disk be more performant. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to select it. And just as simple as that, I'm going to select it and select Add Cache. And just as simple as that, I've made my S3 disk more performant as I'm utilizing not only striping, but I'm also utilizing the fact that now read cache is in front of that system to make those disks more performant. All right. So now that we've added our disk devices, we've aggregated them in a storage pool, the next step that we have to do is that we have to share this out to our end users, to our applications, to our servers. And the way that we do that is that we actually create volumes in LUNs. Now, the way that this is going to share out, your volume name should adhere to your company policies. So whatever share you're used to sharing out, I would actually decide you should adhere to those rules. So from a volume name standpoint, we're going to go with user share. And I am going to go ahead and select that storage pool. It's S3. I'm going to select a storage pool because it's not, I don't need my user shares and access to my user shares to be the most performant. I'm going to share it out via NFS and also via CIFS. I also have the ability to make it thin provisioned or thick provisioned. We also have the ability to do compression and deduplication at this level. They both come with a resource cost. So if you're looking at doing compression, you're going to add a little bit more CPU. For dedupe, you're going to want to add some more memory. And then we'll talk about snapshots. So we get right out of the box, by default, we enable snapshotting of the system. And that gives us the ability to be able to stand up readable, writable clones, which we'll show you later. But by default, we snapshot the volume every 3 hours. But it's definitely tunable for if you need something else that would be better for your environment. You can go in or you could schedule it for something. We also have a scheduled snapshot retention policy. We start off 10 hourly, 6 daily, 1 weekly. We could go ahead and we could create that volume. So now we have a volume created that allows you to actually access it within a cloud via CIFS or via NFS. And it's actually backed by S3 storage. We now are going to go ahead and create a more performant storage. I'm setting up a website that I'm going to have in the cloud, and I want to be able to have some fast disks that are actually sitting behind it. They probably wouldn't call the share website in production. However, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and call it website. So I go ahead, I select my storage pool. It's an EBS disk, and I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to share this out via NFS, and I'm sharing it out via CIFS. We talked about compression and duplication. In snapshots, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do create. All right, so now we have both volumes created. They're backed by AWS disks, and we're going to go in and I'm going to talk about snapshotting. So QA did something that they ended up breaking our environment, and based on the fact that they broke our environment, they want to be able to test that the fix that they have created actually works. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go in. I can't let them use my production data, but what I could do is do a snapshot of my existing environment, and I am going to create a readable, writable clone so that they could test their fix on that. And it's just as simple. This is now a point-in-time instance of the data that existed in the website. And it's usable, it's readable, writable, and shared out in my environment to my users. We also have the ability to attach and integrate with LDAP and Active Directory to ensure that the security of your environment is intact. Okay, and so with that, that is in a nutshell what we went what we went about doing for giving you access to your data. So I'm going to run another video. This video should actually be a little faster. We're going to go in, and what we're actually going to do is set up snap replicate between two instances within AWS. We talked about the SLA within Amazon that gives you 5 nines worth of availability for instances that you have in multiple AZs. SoftNAS allows you to do that. I have 2 instances in this environment. Both are in the West. One is in West 1A and one is in West 1B. So with that, I'm actually going to set up replication of my data between both of my instances. So the first thing that we're going to go in is that we require that the storage size be the same on both nodes. So it doesn't have to be the exact same type of storage, but it needs to be the same amount of storage. And we also require that you name the storage pools the same. So I'll go in. For the sake of time, I went ahead and I added these. I added the drives in advance. And so with that, I'll just go ahead and I'll create my storage pools. Let me create my EBS storage pool, if I could spell it correctly again. Selecting RAID 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and select Create. Being warned again, we're very concerned about your data. We want to make sure that it's extremely secure. So with that, we have EBS pool. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create our S3 pool, or a pool of S3 disks. We're just going to go and we'll be able to create. Now we have both systems ready to be able to do replication between them. Everything that exists under the LUNs and volumes, those will be automatically synced from the source node over to the target. Just verifying one last time to make sure that the pool names are correct in there. And now we should be able to go to snap replicate and set up the snap replication between the source and the node. So we're going to go in, we're going to add, we're going to click next. All that is asking me is for the host name of the IP of the instance on the other side. I'll go ahead and actually populate that. And then it's going to prompt me for the password for the other side. You go ahead. And just with that click, I've made my system more resilient. I'm going through the process right now of replicating my data into a different availability zone. And given my being able to do a manual failover if push came to shove, to be able to access my data from a different node. If you notice, we'll go ahead and we'll show that during this process, we are now taking everything that we created, even the readable, writable clone, and we're moving that over to the secondary instance. And I'll show you. So we have source node, we have a target node, and it's being asynchronously replicated between nodes. So now, this is great. We have the ability to have our data in 2 locations. It took little or no time in order to actually do that. What if we could stand up 2 instances but put a VIP in front of those instances and give you the ability to fail over in case of an issue? We have the ability to do that with SnapHA. We're going to select a virtual IP, and where you have the ability to use a virtual IP or elastic IP, we're going to select a virtual IP. For the sake of this demo, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to choose 2.2.2.2. I'm going to select next. Because of the IAM role, we don't need to share out the access key. Now we're going to go ahead and click install. So while we're going and installing this, there's a bunch of heavy lifting that's being done in the background that SoftNAS is handling on its own. We're updating routing tables. We're ensuring that S3 is accessible. We're making sure that each instance could actually talk to each other. We're setting the heartbeats and putting the heartbeats in place. With that VIP that sits in front of these instances, we want to make sure that if your source node goes down, that your target node is going to stand up and be able to give you no downtime access to your data. So we're going to hover around 30% for a couple of seconds. We're going to jump to 50, and within a second we're actually going to be at 100. So here we go. And this is actually real time. It was not sped up, just to show how easy it is for us to be able to set up a HA environment, which allows you to be able to, from a cloud standpoint, lift and shift your applications, giving them the ability to use the protocols that they're familiar with. So that's your NFS, that's the CIFS, AFP, and iSCSI if you see fit. All right. So with that, I'll end the video showing part of the demo, and I'll go back to actually showing more of the PowerPoint slides. Sorry, let me actually just take a sip of water. I apologize. So I know if you're in a room with a bunch of folks, or even if you're by yourself, you're saying, it looks good, but how much is this going to cost me? I'm actually very glad that you asked that question. And I want to introduce you to the TCO Calculator. You could use this calculator to compare the cost of your running applications with what it would actually cost you within an AWS environment. All you have to do is describe a bit of your configuration, and you'll be able to do it. So let me actually go ahead. I'm just going to show it fairly quickly. Watch it populate. So it's very easy. You're just going in, you're selecting currency. It's going to ask you what type of environment it is and the region. Your application, what's the amount of VMs that you're looking at, and also storage. What are you looking from a storage standpoint? For the sake of this demo, we went ahead and we did a 3-year total cost of ownership for AWS for a 40 terabyte instance. And what you could actually see is that there is a huge cost savings between going on from an on-premise system to an AWS system. And the majority of this cost saving is actually located in infrastructure. Getting rid of the need for you to manage that underlying infrastructure ends up saving you about 61% worth of your cost savings. All right. All right. So how do you pay for this? I know that's right after how much does it cost? The next thing is how can we pay for it? And the challenge is you want to move to AWS, but where's your budget for AWS? We talked early in this slide where budgets are not increasing. Budgets are being strangled, but you're being forced to actually think about the fact of moving to cloud and how to move to the cloud quicker. So what we suggest as an innovative method is to allocate your existing maintenance renewal budget to be able to use on cloud, to be able to make your shift to the cloud. We do have a mock-up right now, just in this slide. We're seeing that for a 50 terabyte on-premise system from a maintenance renewal budget, we're looking at around $450,000 for $265,000. You could increase the size of your environment in AWS and by 20 terabytes. That in of itself is cost effective enough. So we at that point you actually selected some of the steps that you might be thinking about. Pick a tier 2 application to migrate to AWS. Test the waters with that application. From your learnings, you could then create a work plan to migrate the remaining apps and workloads and data. When all the migration is done, it's time for you to unplug your on-premise hardware and actually have a party because of all the money that you're actually going to be saving. So lift and shift. SoftNAS allows you to lift and shift while maintaining the same enterprise level service and experience that you're used to. We're the only company that gives a no downtime guarantee SLA. We will give you the same enterprise feel in the cloud that you're used to on-premise. So whether or not that's serving out your data via NFS for your apps that need NFS, SIFs, or SMB, we have the ability to do that. We deploy within minutes. We give you the ability, as we demonstrated, to do stored snapshots. The GUI in of itself is easy to learn, easy to use, no training. You don't need to send your teams back to get training to be able to use SoftNAS as a software. It is there, it is intuitive, and it's easy to use. We talked about disaster recovery in HA. And being able to move to a monthly or annual subscription. So help us help you. Migrate your existing applications to the cloud. We allow you to use the standard protocols and leverage AWS's storage elasticity. SoftNAS enables existing applications to migrate unchanged. Our software provides all the enterprise NAS capabilities, whether it's SIFs, NFS, iSCSI, and it allows you to make the move to the cloud and preserve your budget for the innovation and adaptations that translate to improved business outcomes. SoftNAS can also run on-premise via a virtual machine and create a virtual NAS from a storage system and connect to AWS for cloud-hosted storage.
All right, thanks for that, Kevin. All right, so going on to our next poll, I'm just going to launch that real quick, is, what storage workloads do you intend to move to the AWS cloud? For those of you who are interested in moving to AWS, is it going to be NFS, SIFs, iSCSI, AFP, or are you just not intending to move to AWS at all? So it looks like we've gotten about half of you to vote so far, so I'll give that about 10 more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and pull up our results. All right, so it looks like about over 40% of you are intending to move NFS workloads to the AWS cloud, which is pretty common with some of our with what we've seen. And CIFS and iSCSI support is also pretty well too. And then a couple of you are just have no interest in moving to the AWS cloud. And for those of you who don't have interest in moving to the AWS cloud, again, in the questions pane, please let us know why you don't intend to move to AWS. I'll go ahead and hand it over back to you, Kevin.
All right, not a problem. So let's actually just go over, and I'll do a very quick review of SoftNAS. So SoftNAS, in a nutshell, is an enterprise filer that exists on a Linux appliance with a ZFS backend in the cloud or on-premise. We have a robust API, CLI, and code base that integrates with AWS, S3, EBS, on-premise storage, and VMware. This allows us to provide data services like block replication, allow you to access cloud disks. We give you storage enhancements such as compression and inline deduplication, multi-level caching, and the ability to produce writable snap clones and encrypt your data at rest or in flight. We continue to deliver best of brand services by working with our industry-leading partners. Some of these people you guys might know, such as Amazon, Microsoft, VMware. But we continue to partner with them to enhance both our offerings and theirs. So these are some of the brands that you trust, and they trust us also because these companies are using SoftNAS in many different use cases all over their environments. We have a couple of these just to bring out a few: Netflix, Weather Channel, and too many to name. So with that,
all right, thanks, Kevin. I'm just going to go ahead and take over the screen share real quick. All right. So to thank everyone for attending this webinar, we are handing out AWS credits. And if you click on this bit.ly link right here, you'll actually be able to register for a $100 AWS credit. Now we're only giving out 100 of these, so the first 100 people to register for it will get it. I'm also going to paste the link here in the chat window, and you'll be able to click on that link to register for the credit. You just have to go to the page, put in your email address, and you'll get one of our team members will get back to you later today with your free credit information. And then as far as next steps go, for the CXOs in our audience, we invite you to try out that AWS TCO Calculator. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to contact us. Just visit our Contact Us page here on the bottom, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about cloud costs and how SoftNAS and AWS are actually better result in more cost savings over an on-premise solution. And we also recommend that you have your technical leads actually try out SoftNAS. So tell them to visit the softnas.com/tryaws page, and they'll be able to go and try out SoftNAS free for 30 days. And for some of the more technical people in our audience, we invite you to go to our AWS page where you can learn a little bit more about the details of how SoftNAS works on AWS, so you can learn. And any questions that you might have, again, please feel free to reach out to us. And we also do have a white paper available that covers how the SoftNAS architecture works on AWS, and that gets into some pretty technical details that should help you out. And that covers everything that we have to talk about today. So now let's go on to the Q&A session. And we do thank you guys for asking questions throughout the webinar. So I'll go ahead and start having a few questions answered. So our first question here is, why choose SoftNAS over the AWS storage appliance?
Okay, and I think that's a good question. Why? Because within we give you the ability from a SoftNAS standpoint to be able to encrypt the data. We also give you the ability, as we spoke about in the webinar, we're the only appliance that gives a no downtime SLA, and we stand by that SLA because we have designed our software to be able to address and take care of your storage needs.
All right, thanks for that, Kevin. So on to the next question. Is Amazon the only S3 target, or are there other providers as well?
Yes, Amazon is not the only S3 provider. We do have the ability to connect to blob storage, and we're in other platforms other than AWS.
All right.
So that would be CenturyLink, Azure, among some of the others.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. And then next question, do you have any performance data for running on standard EBS non-provisioned volumes?
That's something that we could, I think that might be a session. So I believe that question came from James. James, feel free to reach out to us. We'll definitely get on a call with you, and that's something that we could dig into more as we discuss your use case. Because depending on your use case and depending on the enhancements that we could actually put in front of these disks, we could definitely come up with a solution that would be beneficial for you.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. And then on to the next question. If I move my storage to the cloud, do I have to move SQL too?
It totally depends on your use case. So this is another use case question, and depending on your internet connectivity, that's something that would be defined by that. The last mile of your connectivity into the cloud is always the most determined, what's going to determine your level of performance. Each use case is different, and that's something that we could definitely do a deep dive and dig into your use case again.
All right, thanks, Kevin. It looks like we have two more questions, so we've got quite a bit of time. So for those of you who are interested in asking questions, just go ahead and paste them in the questions pane, and we'll be happy to answer them. And then as far as our next question goes, let's see, where is it? Oh yeah. What kind of use cases are best for SoftNAS on AWS?
That's actually that's a very good question, and there are multiple use cases. If you have production data that you need CIFS access from, SoftNAS gives you the ability to do that. We allow you to you have website data, you have a web backend that you need to be able to apply iSCSI or more performant disks. We give you the ability to do that also. From a like we talked about it in this webinar, with you have an application that you need to be able to move to the SoftNAS. I mean, you need to be able to move to the cloud. However, in order for you to rewrite that application, it's going to take you 6 months to a year to be able to support S3 or any kind of block storage. We give you the ability to migrate that data by setting up a NFS or a SIF share, whatever that application is used to already in your enterprise.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions that you guys had today. So before we close out this webinar, we just, again, want to invite you to try out SoftNAS free for 30 days on AWS. Just visit, softnas.com/tryaws. And also at the end of this webinar, we do have a quick survey available. We ask that you please fill out that information so that we can better serve you in the future. Just knowing what kind of webinars really interest you will help us out with improving our webinars. And with that, that's all we have for you today. We hope you guys have a great day.